Does the perfect chairperson exist? Yes, chairperson. I've got mentees that have women chairs, so don't limit your thinking in that. Plenty of successful women that could fill the role of chair. So the answer is there's not many perfects in the world. If we want proof of that, all we have to do is look in the mirror, and that's true for all of us. So the good news is you don't need perfect. What you do need is someone who has the traits that you're looking for in a chair, significantly more successful than you are, someone you can get along with and work with, et cetera, et cetera. But oftentimes mentees really don't know what they're looking for. So I wanted to, in this video, talk about that, talk about the mistakes I consistently see, and how to avoid those mistakes, certainly. One of the things, it's kind of a pet peeve of mine, is people end up saying, well, is there a script to interact with these people? And while scripts can be helpful, scripts also can come off like scripts. People read them. So I much prefer, as I did here, to write down some key points that I want to make. I'll occasionally look at this, I'm sure. But in doing that, you'll come off more natural. You'll be talking rather than reading. You'll be listening better, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. So what do people do as far as mistakes, and what do you want to look for? The number one trait most of the time people say is, I want someone who's skilled in mergers and acquisition. That's not untrue, but think about what that definition means. First of all, if you put that into LinkedIn, for example, M&A, mergers and acquisitions, you're going to get a bunch of people. And many times those people are private equity people, bankers, etc. Now, are they involved in mergers and acquisitions? Absolutely. But oftentimes, particularly in the case of bankers, they're rifle shot guys. They financed a deal. They didn't go through finding the deal, analyzing the people, analyzing the technology, analyzing the financials, other than can it pay off the debt, perhaps. So they don't have a broad experience. And you want someone who's either an entrepreneur or maybe a C-suite executive, CFO perhaps, but certainly chairman, CEO, that's done acquisitions and either directly or more often at the C-suite level, they manage the people that looked at the sales force, so a VP of sales, HR VP, VP of research, technology, engineering, CFO, the corporate lawyer, manage those people and manage the process so they have a broad understanding of that. So where do you find those people? You can look on LinkedIn, certainly, but how many of those people are going to hang out on LinkedIn? Probably not too many. So the first thing I would encourage you to do is realize that that position, that chairperson, and call it an anchor chair if you will, it's a term my mentor used, it's the most important position you're going to fill on your board of directors. So understand what you're looking for in that person. Yes, you want broad experience in doing deals. You want someone who has more experience than you do. That shouldn't be hard because most of the people doing this haven't done a lot of deals, if any deals, before. That someone you can get along with, someone who has integrity. That's a little tougher to tell from the outset, but you can, in today's world, do background checks. And if you do enough background checks and you do those online, you'll find people that are fantastic and you'll find people that are not so fantastic. They have judgments against them. Just because they've been in litigation, that's not a potential red flag, depending upon what it is. But if I see somebody with a traffic speeding ticket, no big deal to me. But if they had an SEC violation, yes. And believe it or not, there are sometimes you're going to find people that are on the list of sexual predators, have those kind of things in their past. I know that sounds crazy, but if you do enough of this, you will find people in all kinds of spectrum. And so look at that. Look at the background of the person. The past performance is often a good predictor of what the future is going to be. So then you've got the idea of who you want, the traits that you want, and now you start to reach out to those people. know what you want to say, know how you want to interact, what you're looking for. One of the most important things is when you're contacting them, and again, go pick up a book like Selling DeVito, very important top officer, which tells you how those people think. Most of the time you want to be much more succinct, you want to get to the point, not a lot of chit chat. They oftentimes have personal assistants, executive assistants. It is helpful to go through those people and know how to interact with them. So that's something that if you do will separate yourself. And that's a really important point. You are not the only person contacting these people. So how do you separate yourself from the bots or the other people that are trying to get this person you're contacting? I've had people that said, I just want a billionaire. Okay, you're in some pretty rarefied air if you do that. So they write a letter perhaps, it's a form letter. If you look at the letter, every paragraph starts with I. I want you, this is how you can help me, etc., etc. You want to, in contacting these people, think about what's important to them and ask them, what are your goals? Oftentimes I'll say to somebody, before we talk about what this is, I'd really be interested in knowing, because I'm sure that I'm not the only person that contacts you, what's important to you? What are your goals? Because if I can't match this with that, then there's not much sense in talking about something else in terms of what I'm doing. So most people in that situation on the other side of the Zoom call or phone call will go, whoa, someone who actually is interested in what's important to me? Well, that's different. So you'll begin to separate yourself. Ask those open-ended questions of that person. One of the things that people are petrified of is when they're dealing with big hitters, or really the first time they make any calls or Zoom calls like that, they're scared, understandably. So they're afraid of a few things. First is, well, they're going to ask me a lot of questions. Why would they want to be in business with me? Where am I going to get the money, et cetera, et cetera. They're going to wonder what their pay is and how much equity they're going to get. The first thing, and this surprises a lot of people, but I'll frequently do this in the VIP Mastermind group coaching. When someone's assembled a board, I'll ask the group, how many of the people that you talked to for chair ended up asking about what equity they're going to get? And normally I've talked to 30 people and one person asked. The vast majority do not ask that question. They are more interested in what you're doing, what makes it different than what other people are doing, and why is it important to them? And those are boxes they're going to look to check. They understand that capital will find a good idea. So they're more interested in a good idea. Are you going to quit? Why is it important to you? Your why, if you will. Those are the questions that they want to get the answers to. So you're going to find that oftentimes, and particularly in the example of the billionaire, people will send a form letter to a bunch of billionaires. What amazes them frequently, and this has happened over and over again, is that they get a very high response rate. Had a recent mentee that sent 100 letters plus or minus, got 30 or 40 responses. Crazy for direct mail, right? All of them were no. Usually it's that I don't have the bandwidth or the time. Your deal isn't big enough. After all, I'm a billionaire. They say it a little better than that, but that's the message. And so oftentimes it'll come back from an executive assistant or a personal assistant. But what you learn about those people is they're pretty responsive and they don't take a lot of time to think about, well, let me think about it. In that case, they'll look at it, they'll say no, and they'll ask somebody to get back to this person because they realize where they came from and they just want to put an end to it with them, or maybe they'll give you a suggestion. And a lot of times you'll get, I think it's a good idea, but I just don't have the bandwidth for it. So think about what's important to them. Think about how you can separate yourself from the other people contacting. Do some background on the person. Find out what's important to them. Find out maybe what interests they have. Now, don't creep them out in terms of writing a letter, but where you can make reference to that. So, for instance, if they were involved in a charity and for some reason that was important to you, you might say, one of the things that I was impressed with is the work you're doing in this charity. That's also important to me because, and maybe you got a personal story, just a sentence or two is all that's needed there. Don't come off like, oh, I want to mention that because I know it'll be important to you and maybe you'll say yes as a result of it. It's got to be genuine. But understand too that you're not going to be very good in the beginning of these calls. So don't go for that level at first. Go through some lower levels, sharpen up your game, get ready, and move forward with that, and then start to move up. And that's true in a lot of the steps along the way in business acquisition, whether it's banks, lawyers, accountants, etc. But really important with filling the chairperson position as well. So remember those things. Remember that you don't need perfect. You need someone who's had a lot of success. If they have name recognition, that's great, but someone you can get along with, someone you can learn with and from, and someone who can act as a mentor. So those are the things I wanted to talk about. You want to find those people on LinkedIn, maybe. You want to find those people in the news. You want to find those people in Google searches. You also want to, again, look at that book, Selling to Vito, to understand how to get in touch with them, how to work with executive assistants, personal assistants, all of those things. But if you focus on what's important to them and the reason that this venture that you have may be important to them, then you will do much, much better. And you'll separate yourself from the bots, as I refer to them, which is important. So I would encourage you to do that. Realize that you don't need perfect. Realize that boards are in transition, so sometimes the people first you bring on leave because of other commitments, death, whatever it is. And so oftentimes when somebody has a chairperson, for instance, leave, which happens, they then find someone much better. And then that's because they're better and they've been through this process before. So you can find these people. You can find them if you have something that they think is worthy of their time. They usually are not motivated by more money. They got enough money already, so that's not it. They're looking for good mentees, hard to find, a project that they can get behind and has a personal reason, and if they can add value. And if you hear those words, well, what's important to me is whether I can add value or not. That is a great indication that you're on the right track, not how much equity am I going to get? Am I going to get paid? Are you going to pay my expenses? Big hitters are not going to ask those questions. So I hope that's helpful. If you do not know the steps, go over to brucewhipple.com, look at the courses that are there. There's a chairperson course as well, but I've given you enough here that you'll have a good feeling for what you're looking for and how to do it. I would, if I was going to write a letter, I'd write a personal letter. Good stationery. I'd send it not through just the regular mail. I'd either do priority mail or express mail, something like that. And then I'd follow up on that letter and realize that sometimes, oftentimes, you will have doofus tests used on you. Did the person follow up? If I said no to him, did he still come back in a professional way? And was that person persistent? Because they're judging you through a lot of those interactions. So I hope that helps. I hope that you put together a board and the first person you have to convince that this is a worthy enterprise of someone spending their time is yourself. If you convince yourself of that, you will be much, much more successful.